Perhaps out of all of the audio products I have tried in my life, hundreds at this point, nothing has impressed me more than these $8 Samsung earbuds. The sound quality from these is mind-blowing, given a few prerequisites. I will never use the Moondrop variations again. These sound muted and rolled off in the highs compared to these $8 Samsung earbuds, the EOIA 500, I believe they're called. The bass also sounds way better on these than on the Moondrop variations. As far as like technical performance goes, these are quite literally the best IEMs in the world. And let's get into why. I was looking through publicly available B&K 5128 measurements for IEMs and was looking to see if there was anything interesting. And what surprised me is that I saw these Samsung earbuds which had better treble extension than the Moondrop variations when measured on the B&K 5128. And when listening to the Moondrop variations compared to like the Odyssey LSD5, I felt that the timbre of the highs was just too muted on the variations. It didn't have this energetic sparkle or rawness to the sound, and it just didn't feel like I was listening to real cymbals. It just sounded like artificially smoothed over. And this earphone is not peaky by any means. It's actually extremely smooth in the highs. But it's just like the timbre of the treble is ridiculous. It feels like I'm listening to the actual instruments, and the clarity is mind-blowing. I'm just in disbelief almost over how good these sound, but it really shouldn't be a surprise considering that Samsung is an actual company with many billions of dollars that should be able to know what they're doing compared to some random chi-fi company. If you look at the driver technology being used in these, it's the same as what's being used in several $1,000 Genelec coaxial studio monitors, which are widely regarded as the best speakers you can use for professional mixing. These have an 11mm dynamic driver for the bass and an 8mm dynamic driver for the treble integrated in a coaxial configuration. This is not seen anywhere in the chi-fi market or any other earphone for that matter. I think Samsung probably has some intellectual property around this, but this is a 2 dynamic driver setup in a unique configuration, so there's not really much space being taken up at all, despite the total driver size being 19mm. It has better treble than any IEM in the world. And what are the downsides? Literally nothing. That is assuming you have one of these, which is an IEC 60318-4 measurement device, so you can actually measure the responses of your individual units, because you might actually get significant channel variation. The measurements I've seen online have varied in terms of unit variation. Some have very high unit variations, others have very low unit variation. But in my case, in the bass and upper mids, the right channel has way more energy. In the treble, the channel matching is actually very good, which is great because it's easier to match the lower frequencies. But yeah, the pink is the right channel, and I just equalized them to have the same response using my Qdelix 5K in the individual channel EQ configuration. Otherwise, the imaging was terrible, and it just sounded like it was too biased towards the right side at certain frequencies, and you can't get really holographic imaging unless you have good channel matching. The earphones come with a series of small, medium, and large tips. None of them seal in my ears, so I am using SpinFit W1 ear tips for listening to them. When I first got these earphones, I wasn't particularly impressed because I was inserting them like normal earbuds, and what happens is that the stem contacts your ear and you're not able to actually insert it deeply enough such that you can get a halfway resonance at around 8 kilohertz or after. And if you're getting like a resonance at around 7 kilohertz, you're going to hear a massive dip at 8 kilohertz, and then there tends to be some more peaks in the upper treble, and it just cucks the treble quality a bit. Then I had the idea, why don't I swap the channels in my software such that the left channel is being sent to the right earphone and vice versa, and I inserted them like IEMs such that I'm able to get a very deep fit and the stem is not blocking my insertion, and now I'm getting a resonance peak at around 8.4 kilohertz and extremely smooth treble extension with no peaks whatsoever. And it's just ridiculous. The treble quality is godlike. It's like I'm listening to God as if it were a thing. It's really quite frankly unbelievable how good these sound. Out of the box, these sound really muddy and bloated. You can still hear the amazing treble quality, but there's just artifacting in the vocals, making them sound congested, and yeah, it's just way too muddy out of the box. But luckily that is easily correctable with equalization, and I EQ'd them to the PEC-dB hi-fi target. This resonance peak showing up at, a really high level is not nearly like that in my ears, and even on the 5128. Here's a measurement of them with the stock tips for reference. I think with the deep fit, both the stock tips and the spin fit W1s are getting very good treble quality for me, but I'm able to get a much better seal with the spin fit W1s, and the bass quality is ridiculous for that reason. If you look at the Chi-Fi market and the measurements of the current top releasing earphones, you'll notice that they have balanced armature or electrostatic drivers. I took measurements of the Moondrop Variations and the Samsung buds at the exact same volume levels, and I compared the differences in the magnitude responses at these different levels, as well as analyzed the harmonic distortion. Firstly, the variations were measured at a lower level, around 0.2% distortion for most of the range. It peaks at around 0.5% distortion. There have been a lot of variation units with much higher distortion than this, but my unit is actually quite good in this regard. But if we look at the Samsung earphones, the distortion is below 0.1% for the entire range. And it's able to achieve this because it's not using any balanced armature drivers. And if we look at the distortion of the Moondrop Variations when measured at a higher level, we can see that in the low frequencies it's increased to 0.5%, and it's not really going over 0.5% distortion at any of these frequencies, but it did increase in the treble as well. If we look at the distortion measurement of the Samsung buds at a higher level, it's below 0.5% for the entire range, and at 1 kilohertz, the distortion is a bit lower at 0.3% versus 0.6% on the Variations. Now, if you look at the magnitude response measurements of the Variations measured at these different decibel values, we can see that the responses are not exactly the same. You can see that relative to the lower volume measurement, the sub bass is slightly reduced and the mid bass is increased, and the upper mids have lowered a little bit. I don't know if this is actually audible or not, but it is an observation. And if we look at the Samsung earphones measured at the different volume levels, they measure exactly the same aside from maybe this 5 kilohertz difference, which is smaller than any of the differences seen in the Variations measurement. But as far as technical performance goes, these are as good as it gets for an IEM. And I'm not sure if this is why I feel the bass is better on these than the Variations. Maybe it has something to do with the balanced armature drivers, acoustic impedance interaction, but I do feel like the bass has more impact, hits harder with these than on the Variations. And I would say timbrally, these sound almost identical to the Odyssey LST5 after EQ'd the PEC-dB hi-fi target. These just have more scale and you can feel the bass on your skin, but sound quality wise, they sound about the same. And it's a $4,500 headphone versus these $8 earbuds, which I guess you probably need to correct for the channel imbalance with one of these $100 devices by measuring the earphones and then using a Qdelix 5K to do the EQ correction if you want to use it portably. And really, this is the best. I've never heard an IEM that comes close to this in sound quality. I don't see myself really honestly buying another IEM again. This is just absurd. So to recap, measure the individual units, channel match them with software, EQ the response to the PEC-DB hi-fi target, swap the channel outputs in software, insert them like IEM such that the cable goes over your ear and you're able to get a deep fit without the stem getting in the way, and possibly get spin fit W1 tips if the stock tips don't seal for you. And this is the best sound quality you can get out of an IEM. This is the truth. This is the audio black pill. Whether you want to believe it or not is up to you. I have given you all the information you need. That's it.